Welcome everyone to Let Them Talk. I'm Yuri Bobbert, your host, and each month I have the privilege of hosting an extraordinary leaders. Together we dive into their captivating stories, capture some wisdom from their experience and navigate the challenges of tomorrow. Join me today as we warmly welcome our esteemed guest Amir Arooni. Welcome Amir to the podcast.
Thank you, Yuri, for inviting me.
You happy to be here?
I'm very happy and I'm looking very forward to our conversation.
Super, because I'm really glad that we have you as our guest today, because we have shared also quite some experience together. That's why I'm also glad that you're here, because we know each other already for quite some time. And I want to have the guest meet Amir in the way I have also experienced you as a extraordinary leader in digital and change management, all those things that are relevant in any organization. So, a small introduction about yourself. So we got to know each other in 2016 when we together worked at Nationale Nederlanden, NN Group. And you had an amazing story that you mentioned to me about your background and what brought you here in the Netherlands, and also what brought you here in terms of your career. And before we are going to dive into all the things that are relevant in terms of your professional career, I'm also, and the audience as well, very interested in your personal movements and your personal story. What brought you here in the Netherlands, and also obviously what brought you to the US, because you're the former CIO of Discover US.
So Yuri, thanks again for inviting me for this conversation. I always enjoyed my conversation with you because of your positive energy. And when you asked me to come, I even didn't thought about it and I said immediately yes. Because what is actually the most important element in my life is how we can get together, do something, get positive energy and do it every day better. That is the philosophy of my life. From the day one I came to the Netherlands, that was the first thing in my mind. And therefore the first priority in my life was learning Dutch language. Because if you want to stay in this society, you need to talk the language. And through learning language, you learn the culture of people. And you can engage with them in a much better way. So I learned Dutch language, and my first education was in finance. I was accountant. And I went to Groningen, which is a city in the north part of the Netherlands, sit there at the University of Groningen, study finance and accounting. And after 2 weeks, I said to myself, this is not my job. I'm not getting energy from this. And I stopped immediately and came in interaction with some guys who were actually started building programs. And I started programming and learning programming. And from there, I did a study of 2 years in technology. And from that moment, I've been working in technology, from the job like being a software developer to lead software developer, being an architect to management positions, working in technology and operations. That is my passion, and having impact in what we do. And above all, I would like to work with people with positive mindset. And that is the whole story of my career. Everywhere I go, I'm looking for what we can do better, what can I learn, and how we can improve what we do. And leave actually the situation better than what I got at the beginning. And so is my career.
Nice. Yeah, that's also how I got to know you, as a person that has a very big positive influence also to other people. I can remember an anecdote where you also mentioned about how we look at people, in terms of if you look positively to the world or to problems, or in a negative sense, it's how we approach things. It's also how we see things. And you had an amazing story about the preacher and the clown, and the preacher and how we look at it. Can you share that with our audience? Because I think it's an amazing story on how you look at people.
Yeah, that story, I remember that we had a talk about that. And it was one part how you approach people, but at the other part is about how you approach change and how you bring positive change in the working environment, business, or any other environment where you are. So I did a study in UK, and the title of the study was Coaching and Consulting for Change. And the good things about the study was that there were a lot of metaphors there, and things from Shakespeare was there. So we'll learn how music developed, how literature developed, how people in the past dealt with the change and with the resistance. So I wrote a dissertation, and my dissertation was about what is the impact of senior leadership in the organization. Now, Yuri, that's a long story. But in short, is that all of the senior executives think that they are steering the company, that they are steering the business, that without them, the business will go a totally different way. And the outcome of my research was that that is not true. The biggest impact which you can have in an organization is about 4%. 4%. On 96% of what you do or what the company do, you do not have any impact. So the major question for me in terms of learning was, if my impact and biggest impact to the company is not more than 4%, how can I use that 4% to have a bigger impact? So with 4% having 100% impact. And I developed that metaphor of someone who is actually sitting in a corner with a number of people and is on the chair and put a flower on his nose. And I asked everybody, what is this guy doing? And everybody told me, this guy is entertaining. And that was actually the right answer. I asked the same people to say what they see when I replaced that flower with a book in his hand. So everything was the same. The audience were the same. The context was the same. The person was the same. And instead of having a flower on his nose, he had a book in his hand and looking to the sky. And I asked those people, what is he doing? And the majority of people say he's praying. So the difference between praying and entertainment, which is a significant difference, has been made by just changing one element. And that element is replacing the flower on the nose with a book in the hand. With such a small change, you change the whole context. And people get totally different idea about what's going on. So when it comes to change, I'm always looking at the company and I'm looking at what are those areas which in a small change can lead to a big impact. And that was the metaphor which we talk about.
Yeah, nice. And now I'm wondering, so you went to the US. When you look at a company like Discover, like such a large organization with such a huge IT population, that's a big organization. What are the things that you're then looking for and the 4% that you can actually make the impact of the 96? So what were the things that you brought, because you had that wisdom already from Europe, European organizations, and you brought it to the US. What were the things in Discover that you identify as the 4% that I can change? Were there any things that you could have influenced?
Yeah, the US story is really very interesting because when I went to US, I had some idea about the US as a country, the Americans as people, and Discover as a company. And shortly after my start, I came to the realization that my idea about US as a country, Discover as a company, and people as American was totally wrong. Everything which I knew or I thought I knew about the country, the company, and people was different than what I saw there. Fantastic, really fantastic country, a country of opportunity. And we can say, oh, this is America, but that is not the case. If you're there, the opportunity is there and you can see it. The company is actually located in Midwest of US, Chicago area, and Midwest culture is a very friendly and collaborative culture. It is also a lot of passive aggressive elements there. So I had to learn that. And American people are so friendly, and I can't tell enough about how nice are the people and how nice was the environment and how much love I got from people and the company and the country. And it was great moment of my life, and I advise everybody who has ability to go and work in US, go and do it for a few years. You will come much richer back to your own environment. Getting to your question about what was actually the biggest change, I think sharing knowledge was the most important one. We had multiple solutions for the same opportunity or problem. And in the core, people did not exchange what they did or what they know, not because they didn't want to exchange, but because there was no context for. So we built Discover Technology Academy at Discover, and we brought the value of the cultural element to the academy. So we succeed together, or we play to win. And with those elements, we create an environment of learning. So people who were good at something, they came and made others better. People who wanted to get better went to the academy and started to get better. And I remember my very first masterclass, which I gave to the people myself, about the technology elements, about the role of cloud, and about how we can actually bring cyber and security to a next level of our evolution. And after that, I asked my CFO and CEO and CMO to come and share their experience on their job with technology people. That context of learning, that masterclass every 2 weeks on Friday morning, became something very amazing, and still is there, and I'm getting a lot of positive energy from that.
I think you were also rewarded for that, with an award. Yeah, amazing. And that's exactly the 4%, because it's actually now I'm thinking of it, a small intervention that you do, but basically big impact. Also because you involve senior leadership to share their ideas, and then you get a snowball rolling. It's all about changing knowledge, changing experience. Yeah, amazing.
Yuri, that's exactly the same what you said, because with establishing of Discover Technology Academy, we brought a different way of communication and engagement between finance, marketing, product development, and technology. With establishing of Discover Technology Academy, we went to the market and we attract much better talent. With the Discover Technology Academy, we start to share what are the best practices of solutions, and we start to encourage reuse before buy and before build in the company. So that small, what I call it small, that 4% establishing of Discover Technology Academy brought a significant change in the context. And that is the whole story of my
nice.
change management.
So, and also in terms of, if you go back to the root of Amir, you coming to Europe, learning the language, the ability and the willingness to learn new things. And that's also how I got to know you. And I think when we first met, you said to me, well, yeah, by the way, I have 3 master's degrees in finance and IT. And then I was thinking, what the heck, how can this guy do that next to his job as a CIO? And then you learned me something very interesting. And I can remember that anecdote that you told me about learning, how you learn. And learning, and not only learning, but also applying what you've learned into practice. You already gave an example of this 4% change in cultural change and leadership, but what are those things that we can share with our audience about how do you learn and what can others learn from that way of learning?
Yeah, Yuri, I think you're right that learning and sharing becomes top priority for all the companies these days. The level of information and the digitalization in companies brought a significant amount of data to every single person. So we need to have a place where we can discuss and learn from each other and avoid mistakes which has happened in the past and learn from those things to do things better. I think that is the concept of digital mindset which we need these days. At the same time, you need to take into account that every single person is unique in the way that person learns. So you need to pay attention for those elements. When we put Discover Technology Academy in place, master classes was just one, but we had training on the job, coaching, mentoring. We invited external people to come and share with us their experience. We started to celebrate success, celebrate wins. We started to share with each other what goes better in my area and invited others to come and learn. So the whole concept of learning came into life by different pieces, which gives somehow information and way of learning to each individual. When I wanted actually to talk to a music school about what are the different way of learning music, and I got inspired by a methodology in music. You call it Suzuki method. And Suzuki method is learning by doing. And of course, we all know what learning for doing is. But that methodology inspired me even so far that I discussed with my wife, and we brought our daughter actually to that music school because that way of learning was very special. And it was very simple. So my daughter went to music school every single week. And she had to play just 15 seconds, 1-5, of the most complex part of piano in the world. And at the end of half an hour, which was just exercising of that 15 seconds, she got a CD-ROM. At that time, we had CD-ROMs. And her homework was go home, listen to this music, and try to play exactly as you hear. And my young daughter, of age of 8, came home, listened 100 times to that part of music, and played just 15 seconds, but a very high quality. So in 2 months, she was able to play 35 seconds of different part of music, but very good. And we had piano at home. So everybody came to our home, saw the piano and asked, who's playing here? And I say very proudly with my wife, our youngest daughter is playing. So go and play for us. And she went proudly behind the piano and played just 35 seconds of world-class piano. Not longer than 35 seconds. And everybody was very positive, and everybody said, oh, great. How long are you studying piano? And she said, I just started 3 months ago. And everybody say, this girl is a big talent. If you're able to play after 3 months learning this type of music, then you are a big talent. That gave my daughter positive energy to go and learn more, because those compliments make you bigger, provide you positive energy. And she learned actually piano by doing. And I thought later on, can I translate this concept of learning by doing to the change management and bring some practices into life where people just doing that, and by doing that getting better, By getting better, they got compliment and acknowledge of what they do, and by getting acknowledge and compliment, they are able to do it every single day better. And from there, we developed actually a concept of learning. And I told this story in different departments, and people were very enthusiastic about the methodology.
Yeah, and it's also the way to make others grow, eh?
Yeah,
The success of others is your passion and your energy as well. It drives you.
that's something which you see. You see immediately positive energy.
Yeah.
You see immediately that people are growing, and that growing and positive energy create positive context. And that becomes more and more and more just by doing.
And so that's also a way how you learn for yourself. Eh? So how you
Yeah.
ingest and you learn about new items, new things. Because I also get to know you as a person that if you don't know something, you obsessively going to learn and you're going to do things and you're going to ask everybody. You want to know all the details. I can also remember an anecdote where we had a discussion during, I think it was an outage or there was something wrong in the environment. And we spent there an entire night where you want to know all the details. What is that obsessive way of wanting to know all the details to then improve others? What is it? What's that intrinsic motivation, Amir? I'm so curious. Now we have the opportunity to ask you.
Yeah. I'm so sorry to disrupt you in those days, but you're right. Um, failures is actually big investments, because when something goes wrong, it goes wrong because you have delivered something, you have done something, you invest in something. And the most important element is there a way to learn from that and make it better? When I went to US, we translate this in a mindset of what I call celebrating of red. So usually in some of the corporate environment, if you are not delivering on time, within budget, within a scope, and all those criteria, you need to go and explain, and the blame culture becomes actually the dominant one. That blame culture creates a culture of not being transparent. And if you want to deliver really results, you need to know what is going on and how you can help others. So transparency becomes key. And I learned to celebrate red because I could hear what is going well and what is going wrong, and help people to remove actually impediments and move faster, and by learning doing that the next day better. That is the whole story of my life. If you start somewhere and you have ability and capability to reflect every single day, and you ask yourself, what did I do today? And how can I make it better tomorrow? And you make it habit, and you have discipline to bring it in every piece of work, then I can assure you that every day you're better than the day before. So we had a technical incident and outage, which is significant because we disappoint our customers at the moment that they need us. And I can start and blame others, or I can say, what can we learn and how we can improve and how we can avoid it in future? And that was the whole story of, all right, let's go through details, understand what happened, and try to put measures in place which make us better than yesterday. And that is a philosophy of my life.
Yeah, it reminds me to the philosopher Nassim Taleb about building an anti-fragile environment is that you learn from your knocks and you learn from bad things that happen to you, because then you fully understand how can I learn from that and become better and become more anti-fragile. So I really like that. Hey, and I was wondering because that mindset also in the US, is there a difference, to your opinion, between the EU and the US in terms of the mindset of learning also from if there's something appreciate the red, learn from it? Is there a difference between the European people, let's say, and the US? Is there, or is it the same?
So I would say nothing is the same because every company in each country has the context of the culture and people and technology. But in the essence, you can find commonality between them. I think the culture of the company which I worked at in US was a culture of collaboration. So if things were difficult, we said to each other always, oh, we are all in this together. And that motto of we are all in this together bound us to resolve it together. I saw really a culture of collaboration there, but also not being too humble to say that we are playing to win. And that was really different. I mean, if you go to a European company and say, we are going to win this market, they will look at you and say, okay, that's okay. I remember when I was at another company and I talk about being first digital banking in our market. Everybody say, now we want to be a good digital banking, but being the best, we will see. But in US, people are talking about that. People are talking about how we can win the market. How can we win the heart and mind of our customers? How can we deliver better products and get into that level of, it is a competitive market. And because of that, winning is important. And if you combine winning with a collaborative culture, then you are not having egos and heroes, but you have an organization which works together to deliver something which is great. I remember when I got my contract of US, the first sentence in my contract was, Amir, this is the beginning of something great. That was the first sentence in my contract. And that's the mindset which I saw in US. And I would love to have and to see those things more in Europe.
Yeah, because that's an interesting point that you make there, because what you recall to the US culture being entrepreneurial, wanting to win, achieving great things. You spent now 4 years in the US, established quite a lot there. If you look at your entire track record in the US, what you've done there, you came back to the EU. Now we see in the EU a lot of regulations, specifically in the domain of tech. We see AI Act, Service Act, Market Act. There's a whole bunch of EU regulations coming at us. Might could argument if that's good for the European Commission in terms of its entrepreneurship, and do you think there's any form of does it might suffocate the European Union compared to the US, or what do you think is good or bad about that? Do you have an opinion about it? Because you've seen the opposite, entrepreneurship, and now you are back in the EU.
Yeah. So what you see actually is law and regulation about everything which we do is really necessary in our market. Big tech companies have access to personal data of you and me and millions of other customers. Trust is very important, and actually this is, by the way, one of the area which you are very expert on, that cyber and security. So how we can build solutions which is reliable and which is secure, because the biggest asset which you have, the data of your customers, is in your hand. So I am very supportive of having good law and regulations around everything which tech companies are doing. The point is, sometimes you need to experiment and learn. You cannot wait until every single thing has been written in policies and procedures. And in that area, maybe US is more aggressive. We could start any initiative, experiment, and while we're experimenting, also writing the policies, procedures, and before getting into production, it was a product, and it was a reliable product. that is an area which we can learn something from US. But I also discovered that there is a value in those policies and in those regulations. And if we are able to bring the politicians and people who are putting those procedures together with the tech companies who are building solutions and build coalition, then we will have actually the most win for both.
Yeah, sounds like the perfect story, yeah, for bringing them together and understanding that you can also leverage on that, on all those policies and procedures. You can actually make it the beneficiary for it.
Absolutely.
I also think that, but I'm curious about your opinion, that if similar with finance, you know this is with your accounting background, is activating the biggest asset that big tech companies or tech companies have is data.
Yeah.
Where basically we're not activating data most of the time, so you don't see the value of the data, and therefore it's not top of mind of a CFO and a CEO. But if that becomes a regulatory requirement that we need to activate data, then people
Yeah.
are also observing, hey, this is a value for me,
Yeah.
so I have an interest of protecting it. And I think then you turn it around and you make it a more, let's say, a necessity for every board member to do something about
Yeah.
that.
I think that is the whole concept of digitalization, because we move from physical products into digital products. I don't know how long ago you had really physical money in your hand, but when I look to myself and to a lot of other people, everything which we do is digital. So you move money digitally from one place to another place. Everything which banks these days are doing are digital. And everything which is digital is related to data and security. So the importance of the data analytics security is so big, and the assets of most companies are related to these areas. And by the way, Yuri, you know that companies who are working with data are, in terms of value in the market, are much higher evaluated than those physical things which we did in the past. The biggest companies in the world today are companies who has been fully built on software and on technology, and who are dealing with the data on a
Yeah,
trustful and safe manner.
yeah. The top 10 is majority is tech, and there's only Aramco and Hathaway, Berkshire Hathaway investment firm that are in the top 10.
Exactly.
And I think that it will even go further, where we also see our kids, for example, making digital friends. And their friends are becoming digital, and they play in their metaverse with digital friends. So it will even go further than that. And I think that also in terms of the regulations, but I'm curious about, because in the US you see a lot of opportunity arising there, in terms of we see this as an opportunity. We can
Yeah.
leverage on the data. EU is now restricting us too much, so we are now deviating from EU and we go to other markets. How do you see that?
That might be the case in some areas, but my personal experience in US is that there is a lot of law and regulations there. You have multiple way of being controlled by different organizations. The number of conversations which I had in US with the regulators was actually much higher than what I was used to in Europe. So there is a lot of freedom, you're right, but there is also a lot of checks and balances and control. And when things goes wrong in the US, the cost of doing wrong things is much higher than what you see in Europe. That is the other part of the story. So everything has a price. Speed there has a price. The regulation here and the amount of procedures and policies which you need to have has a
As a
price.
price, yeah.
And we need to make a right balance between those things. And that's sometimes difficult. But having in mind that those two types of running the company has their own advantages and disadvantages. And I must say, one of the learning things for me was that I thought before I went to US that the regulation is very low, at least lower than what I have seen in Europe, and that was not true in my area. I had much more conversation with regulators. I had much more IT general controls, reporting. I had much more attention from uh, internal and external departments to what we did with the data and how secure was those data. So there is a little bit of misunderstanding in how easy it is in US to deal with those things. The law and regulation is very, very solid even in US.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned it, I also, and it makes me smile a little bit what we experience with our own journey when we work together in a big financial institute, that we seek for the collaboration with the regulator. We
Yeah,
actually explained what we are doing, and the regulator actually appreciated it, and they said, well, you guys are the
yeah,
first one to actually ask us your opinion.
yeah,
And I think that's also a matter of what you already mentioned. If you have the mindset of collaborating,
yeah,
learn from each other, because we also can learn a lot from the regulator, is that collectively you improve your profession. And that's in the end also the goal.
that is absolutely true. And I can say I can recall those days because one of the tasks which you spend a lot of time on that was to take stakeholders with you in your journey. And when you see the regulator as one of your stakeholders, you're sitting down with them, you're listening, and you're trying to work together to get better. And in that sense, I think you did a great job by bringing actually elements, new elements to different stakeholders, actually somehow learning and teaching and coaching them how to apply, but taking also their concerns very seriously and look what you can do with those things to make your product and services better. And that is that type of collaboration which we need to have. The regulator has some good insights which can help you if you have a good level of interaction, communication, and learning. And I think you did it. You did a great job at that moment of time.
Yeah, thank you, Amir, for that. And it is even going further, because I don't know if you know that, but 2 years ago, the regulator asked me to give input on their new framework that they are developing. And last year we presented the results of that research, because we used the university and to do that collectively with the university and help the regulator, and then asked to present it. So you see that also a more sustainable,
Yeah,
collaborative way of working with the industry is
absolutely,
emerging from that.
absolutely.
So that's a good. I think it's also both from the regulator good and as well as from the industry. Hey, so I was intrigued, and that's more because you mentioned something about, and we also experience you as a fantastic storyteller. You tell amazing stories, and I think that's important to also take people along in the journey. Um, I had a very interesting experience with you, and I think it's interesting to share that with the audience, and that is the difference between working in a very structured manner as a person
Yeah, yeah,
versus working
yeah,
in an improvising way. So, as an improviser, you ad hoc on the spot decide what you want to do. I've experienced you a couple of times as the improviser, and I was just curious, because for me, that's something that I look and I see, hey, how the heck is that? Is he getting away with improvising in such a manner that people actually accept that? What brought you there to do that? Because I also know that you are very structured. You really prepare things. You do rehearsals of things, so very structured. But sometimes you also seek for a way to really improvise and
yeah,
see what's coming at you. So what's in Amir that's driving that improviser? Why do you want to do that? What is it?
yeah, Yuri. That's a very good question, and you're right because I love jazz, and I enjoyed a lot to be in Chicago in the jazz bars where people come and just play. I haven't seen those people looking to the note and play, but they play always great music, beautiful music. And the whole idea is that when they are together and they listen to each other and they align actually notes together, they can create something which is new. They come with some basics, and from there they build those basics to something great. And that's why their life is every day different than the day before. And that's something which I get always energy from. I call it continuous improvement. You can get it by allowing things to happen. While structure is very important, and indeed, I am very a structured guy when it comes to developing and delivering change. But at the same time, improvisation means that you are getting something new which you did not expect. I love to be in that situation. I'm learning from those situations, and I get new insight about people and how they work in such a situation. So it is outside of your expectation, and you need to handle. You need to do something.
Nice. We're almost approaching the end, Amir. I think we can spend here
Yeah,
talking for hours about journeys to Japan, to Madrid,
yeah,
wherever we went together. We actually also talked about our journey to Portugal.
yeah.
To perhaps we can share with the audience what we did there as a team, because I think that it was an amazing journey where I can introduce it a little bit so you can remember. If you, I think you will remember, but the good thing there was that you wanted to inspire the entire team. We had the CIO team, and you want to inspire the entire team by bringing us to this digital summit, web summit,
Yeah.
with Al Gore.
Yes.
You remember the opening speech of Al Gore?
He was the keynote speaker there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have to change? Is yes, we have to change. What are you thinking? Of course we have to change. We cannot condemn the next generation to lives of degradation and despair.
And we spent the week there in one house doing barbecues every day.
Yeah.
What is it that, because I know your mantra is when you create a team, you need to spend a lot of time together. And then you said to me, "Are you smoking, Yuri?" And I said, "No, I'm not smoking." "Oh, that's a pity, because I discuss most of the things while I'm smoking." I said, "Yeah, unfortunately, we need to seek for something else rather than smoking." But that week in Portugal was amazing. But what is it that you think that best teams are made when they are collectively working in a group physically together, rather than what we see now distributed around the world?
Yeah, so Yuri, the idea was actually the same. So I wanted to be with my team and getting better in what we did. And the best way was to bring them to a place where learning is the central of everything. So Web Summit in Lisbon was one of those things. Yearly 60,000 engineers comes there, and you will get a significant amount of information about everything which is new, everything which is working. And it is an honor to be with your team there. So we made some kind of team building sessions, which include going to the web summit, seeing presentations, but coming together and talking about how we can apply those things, and also spend time together outside of our day-to-day work without outlook pressure on our agenda, and knowing each other much better. So I think that example was a combination of learning, being with each other, having fun, and creating a strategy. I remember when we was there, that was 4 days together in Lisbon, doing a lot of fun together, but also having a lot of small moment of conversation and connection. And that brought that the strategy of our 3 years work at that financial institution together. It was great. I'm hearing still a lot of positivity about those days. And those are things which matters. I recall that at the beginning of this conversation, I talked to you about setting a context for change and bringing those teams from The Hague or from Amsterdam to Lisbon, seeing actually different presentations, bringing some of those people very close to you and having time to reflect and talk about how can we apply this technology or how can we apply this solution to what we do, created a new context. I enjoyed to be part of that team, and the team enjoyed. And when you enjoy and you're together and you're proud of your craft, great things happens. And that was the period of time which we were together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I still can remember that one of the items that emerged from that was the automated control
Yeah.
testing that we
Yeah.
later on implemented. And it was pushed by Werner Vogel.
Yeah.
Can you remember the
Yeah, I remember.
AWS CTO? He had an amazing story
Yeah.
about automation of
Yeah.
control
Yeah.
testing. So you see where things end up, if you have such a phenomenal time together. Really, really nice. Last question, Amir, for you. When you look at the things that you've read over time, books or seen in terms of documentary or films, is there anything that you would recommend to the audience to see, read, or listen to, which might be an inspiration?
Book or movies or films. Let me just talk about book, because a friend of mine, which is a change agent, wrote all those his experience of the past 30 years in a book called Innovation from Within. And he wrote actually experiences of transformational journeys in a very, very solid and understandable way. His name is Geert Honekes. I've been working with him, and I read his book twice because there are a lot of practical tips and things which you can apply to your day-to-day work and become every single day better. So I recommend everybody to read Innovation from Within, and the author is Geert Honekes. Great book.
Geert
And
Honekes.
you will learn a lot from his experience.
Great. And what's your favorite Stevie Wonder album?
Don't start to talk about that because we need an hour. A lot.
Yeah? Yeah, it's amazing, Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Amir, for your inspiring stories. Again, it's always a pleasure to see you and to welcome you here. And would like to thank you. And I also would like to thank our listeners and our audience.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and hope you have fun in your work every single day.